Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Your gas is free. Your gas is free. In a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.
Hello and welcome to another Webster Report. Me and Alex had a bit of a conversation before we come on because, we don't want to just sit here and keep repeating ourselves. We want to start trying to bring threads in that can help expand possibly reasons why we've ended up in situations like we have in, why that people understand that if they, voting for Labour is no different to voting a Conservative because they're going to get the same outcome, yet they'll still do it. Why do people follow these patterns? Why do people do things that they're not meant to do when it's easy for them to go and look up at these things? We talk about how we've been taught to act as a debtor in a debt-based economy instead of the opposite. And why do we keep following this? And it's based on some kind of trauma, and it's almost on a mass scale. We're talking about not only just a psyop, it's upon everything. It's a control of information. The banking system's on the verge, they're printing money since the petrodollar contract finished. They're printing it now, they're taking all the equity out of it, replacing it with debt. It collapses, that's it. What happens? All that's happening, the bills are going up. All that's going on. But apparently two Manc lads are getting together and playing some bit of guitar and stuff, and people are distracted. But that's going to happen in October, and people are looking forward to next year. Alex, what's going on? Where do you want to start with that, lad?
Well, maybe we should all just get tickets for, the ringside for Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. 57-year-old Mike Tyson. It's anything really now to be voyeuristic, isn't it? It's like we've got to create entertainment out of everything. And this is, we're in an overly visually stimulated mass media culture. And it's all about capturing people's conscious attention. There was a time when people used to read books and they wouldn't talk about the fact that they had a limited concentration or attention span. Most people today struggle to sit down and find enough time to read a book. And, we've had this conversation, Paul. It's much easier to go to YouTube, which is where we are now, and be conversational, because you can't have a conversation with a book. So I'm not saying that it's all bad stuff that happens on media. There's a lot more information, a lot more data, but it's skewed in a particular direction, and it's affecting our concentration. We know with social media as well, people are obsessed with social media. They're virtually never offline. They're glued to the phone. It's fashionable to criticize people for that, but it's almost like it's crept up on us over the last 20 odd years. And so now, if you lost your phone, it's like losing a limb. And people are losing the memory of what it was like when we only had landlines and stuff. And, what did people do who were having affairs right back then? They'd have to they'll say, get some mud at the end of the street and write in the soil, meet at 7:30 at such and such a place, because they couldn't phone the landline because the missus might pick up. It's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but technology has changed things that much, and we're in an overly visually stimulated culture, and the images that we get, that we absorb, are largely visual. It has a big visual grip on us. And I often say, look at 9/11, regardless of what your position is on 9/11, if you'd watched the footage in real time, if you'd watched that in a cinema, in one of the big screens at the time it went live, you'd have just thought it was part of the movie, because the context.
I did think it was.
Yeah,
I didn't think it was real. I worked I was a taxi driver at the time. All the customers didn't want to go anywhere. I'd just finished my dinner over here at that time, and I couldn't believe it. I'm just stood there going, "This don't look real. This is something not right about this."
But they put it on the news, so again, automatically we take our cues. Oh, this is news. Now we all know. Well, is it? But because you watched it on a news program, you think it's factual. If you'd have watched it in cinema,
it was all loop.
Same footage exactly, but the context would dictate that it was celluloid in the cinema, and you didn't take it seriously. But if you watch it on the news, suddenly you believe it. That's telling us a lot. It's telling us that we trust the visual sense, and maybe sometimes we shouldn't. And so there is a mass trauma. And if you remember, was it Matthias Desmet, the psychology of totalitarianism? He brought that out under the COVID situation. Basically, he's at the University of Ghent. I don't know if he's still there now in Belgium, but he wrote this book on this. And many others have commented on it, going back a long way. So the question is, what is conditioning us? What is affecting our awareness? Are we living in a matrix-type simulation? But those questions are highly philosophical. The question is not so much are we living in one, but how do we step outside of it? And if our trauma is controlling us, has a grip on us, what are we going to do about it? Because from what I can see, if you look at, say, two families, if you had two families side by side, right, there were only two families on the earth, and they were quite big families, and they lived quite close to each other, and they started competing for resources, they could still move somewhere else because the world's a big place. Well, let's just say they couldn't, and they just decided, oh, well, they've got stuff that I want. You start trying to take it off each other, and it leads to war. If you think about what's happening with the elites and the culture war, unlike these two families who might be on a roughly similar level of power, resources, and opportunity to impact each other, that's different than a hierarchical situation that we're dealing with now. So the people who are waging war against us are largely invisible. A lot of stuff that they're doing is happening at a policy level. It's all cascaded down from a policy level. So the decisions are made by faceless bureaucrats, people in suits without a trace of a human being inside these suits. They're making these decisions, but they're just like us. They think they're protecting their interests. They really believe that the World Economic Forum, that they're saving the world. Most of them do anyway. Most of them believe that they're saving the world from imminent disaster. So the question is, how do we engage? How do we really bring about change? And where does change start for me? And if we're traumatized, then we're continuing to be traumatized, and our central nervous systems are activated. The question is, how are we going to be able, first of all, to make sure that we're okay? Like, no, you know.
I'm going to say the people that for those establishments you're talking about, for them to think they're saving the world by doing what they're doing, they must understand that their policies are to reduce. How flowery it's written about saving things. It's got to reduce population. That's the carbon that they're talking about is us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't compute with people because Oasis are getting back together, mate.
Yeah, I know. But from their point of view, it's a rational policy because, for example, if you really believe that the world is overcrowded, let's just say me and you believe the world's overcrowded. Well, what are we going to do about it? Now, if you're in a position of power and you go, well, the world's overcrowded, right, well, we'll get some of these shots in people. That'll help them with their health conditions.
But it won't happen here. It won't happen here. Oasis are playing next year. It won't.
I know.
This is what I mean, that you were talking about the trauma. How do we get past this? Because we were talking about how hard times which we've had created the really softer times. The music, the drugs, the change of culture, the introduction of things, the forced social engineering into things. We can see all this looking back, and it's left us now where they've already done an IQ test. I've never seen anything like it. What happened over the last 3 years, Alex?
Yeah, I know. I agree.
If that's not control, I don't know what is. Yeah, you're driving past people driving on their own with masks on. Some double masks. Some were swimming, taking a deep breath, and then putting their mask back up and swimming underwater. And you're thinking, what happened? When did I wake up in this alternate reality? This wouldn't have happened X many years ago. It's very strange with how the culture's changed, and it flows throughout.
But
You know, go on.
don't you think it's us though? Because I mean, like, I'd be tempted to conduct a straw poll now if we could. I can't see how many are watching now. I've got the chat. But
31,
how many?
31, 31.
31, right. So I'd be interested to do a straw poll of the 31 who are watching and ask how many of them watch EastEnders or Coronation Street. I don't think we're going to get an answer, and probably, since it's a truth-based channel,
I think Dinny watches them both on catch up.
no way, I'll catch up as well. Hey up. But that's it though, isn't it? At the end of the day, we don't tend to look at what we're doing or how we're living our life. We don't look at the ways in which perhaps we're in trauma-based cycles. Like, let's just say my expectation of what I could achieve in my life has been severely impacted by trauma. My life chances were compromised. So I get used to living in a very restricted way, but I'm surviving. You know, it's underrated as surviving. It's better than not surviving. But how much more could we achieve? But we get into these patterns. And was it Henry David Thoreau? I remember that line from in Dead Poets Society is quoted Thoreau. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation. But I went into the woods because I wanted to live deliberately. I wanted to suck out all the marrow of life, basically. And then he carries on saying he didn't want to discover that when he came to die, he had not lived. So, you know, at the end of the day, when Jack and Vera were on it, says Edward. Oh, yeah, when Jack and Vera... Is that Jack Duckworth? I can't even believe I remember his name. I never watched it, but you pick bits up, don't you? But yeah, Coronation Street, is that not a metaphor? It's been going, was it the 1950s or 1960s it started? Is it still going?
60s. Yeah, it's still going.
How can Coronation Street still be on television? I mean,
because it's real life, mate.
Yeah, well, this is what I mean. But some people really believe that, Paul. But
mate, I remember Deirdre. I remember the protests to get Deirdre out of prison, mate.
Yeah, well, there you go. It amazes me. I mean, I've never been into stuff like that. I've always found it incredible, thankfully. I have an immune system.
If I hadn't watched the amount of Coronation Street that I did, there'd have been a lot more arguments if I didn't sit there and watch it. I had no control over what I watched at one time, lad.
Yeah.
Emmerdale, Coronation Street, EastEnders, that would have been me.
You called it Emmerdale, mate. You can't be that old. It would have been Emmerdale Farm. Emmerdale Farm, mate, it were. You remember?
My mum used to watch Emmerdale Farm. Yeah, no, Mr. Wilkes.
Yeah, Emmerdale Farm. Yeah. But soap operas are a good example, aren't they? And people are radically into them. But I mean, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek, but the reason I'm saying it is we don't tend to see things at that level in terms of how do I structure my life? How do I structure my time? Like I've not worked now for like 6 years. I retired at 50 from the NHS. I couldn't imagine working now. I mean, I could if I had to. But the difference is phenomenal. They have most of us chained to a wheel to 67. Good old two-tier wants to get it up to 71 so that effectively no one will ever retire with anything back from the state. So they're always trying to screw us down. They're always trying to distract us. Sports at weekend, anything. All the Saturday night TV was always about promoting an advertising environment for people to consume products. You know, wait for my next holiday twice a year abroad if I can, live for the weekend. If we, as people who understand the truth, have got any of those patterns in our lives, then we're not making the best of our time. And I think, you know, we owe it to ourselves. So for me, we can talk about the big picture in the world, but it wouldn't have got as bad as this if individuals somehow had found a way to find a way of having an authentic existence that really satisfied them.
Well, the thing is, when they've got us from so young, and you've got the social bit being programmed, now they're hitting the individuals. I mean, for me to be taught to act a certain way within this economy, and then understand that all the equity that I'd worked for, I've gifted them by not acting correctly. That really hits home. But to realise my mum taught me that meant it goes a lot deeper. You know, just to quickly cover, I keep getting the same question about a joint gyro. If you've asked the company to send it you, and you've gone through the finance departments, and they're either ignoring you or not, you'll have to go to court and sue them for it, and then pursue down the bills of exchange. Because if the economy collapses, I'm not sure what they're going to bring in. So
Mm.
we're at 10 years ago, they didn't know what to do with it. 10 years ago, we might have changed everything. But, now that people are in that position, the programming's starting to break up because everybody is realising there's something wrong, Alex. So do you see how the traumas only go so far? They always come to a breaking point, don't they?
Well, I mean, you can link it with religion as well. I mean, we were talking just before we went online. One of the things, like, so, we're Christians, right? So that's no secret. But that doesn't mean I'm critical. But like when Jesus was walking around, it was all good or evil, good or evil, good or evil. But the number of people who were just traumatized. I mean, I'm not giving away any identity, but I was talking earlier to a friend whose older brother basically was found choking on the licorice also when he was young. His face was blue. I managed to save him at the time, multiple decades ago. Didn't do much follow-up. Not much could be discerned. Possibly his brain was affected. And he's had challenges ever since that have had an impact on his life, the life of family members all around him, passes down the generations. And you think, well, what was going on there, good or evil? Well, should we send that licorice also to hell? At the end of the day, this guy's trauma was caused, potentially, we don't know, by a licorice also getting lodged in his throat when he was a couple of years old, say. Now, human life is complex, and it's convenient to put things into a good or evil category. So, for example, when Keir Starmer does what he does, we all know he's corrupt, and he's on the payroll of the WEF, like many of these leaders are. But the fact of the matter is, if all we do is correctly blame people for what they're doing wrong, it gives us a chance not to look at what we are or are not doing. If human beings, in general, had higher levels of awareness, engaged in much more productive behaviours, didn't destroy each other, because it's in all of us, then we'd do a lot better. But one of the reasons we don't is because of trauma. So if you look at, like, Carl Jung, and all, people don't particularly like Freud, but ultimately with Jung, there's a little bit more sympathy about the unconscious and the role of the unconscious. Now, you can't be conscious of what you're not conscious of, because by definition, you're unconscious. This is why last week when we talked about activism or awareness is a large part of the piece. But it's not awareness of the state of the world so you can shake the fist at everybody else who's evil. You've got to start off with, well, actually, what is my awareness of my own body, of my own emotions, of my own life, of all the things that have happened to me? Do I embrace my pain? Do I want to move past my pain? Do I want to be driven by my pain? Do I want to become
do we have time to be able to analyse all that? Or is it only at breaking point when everything's out of your control? Is it only then that the programming breaks? Because it's very strange to be showing many people that I show and I speak about. Only the other day when we were all together and I was explaining it, and Ange went, I'm still not getting it until we went down to basic accounting. And I tell a story where I was speaking to. He wasn't a barrister, he wasn't a solicitor, he was a commercial lawyer, and he was in jail for tax evasion. So it was only a short stint. Whoever at his level, somebody messed up. The big lads didn't get paid, so they got made an example of. Anyway, I asked him about negotiable instruments. I said, so the instrument attached to the bottom of the paper bill, a joint jarrow, you endorse that and return it to the agent. That would set your bill off. And he sat on the bed and said 25 years he'd done that job and he never thought of it like that. So I don't get how people don't know this stuff, especially people who are taught it. If I'm not taught something, I learn something new, you go, oh, well, that's something new. If it doesn't make sense to you, you discard it, don't you? That's what I was taught. I thought everybody did that. But we were talking about this programming. When people get hooked into certain things, it's amusing that you took up this trauma thing, and then we were talking about Oasis and whether it was like just songs that were quite really catchy, played in a certain way
Yeah.
that related a lot to Beatles, and you jumped to the defence of the Beatles without even thinking.
Mm.
And you had to pull away and go, whoa, hang on. Why would I? You know, this band like was part of an influence on nations and social engineering, and you see with all the signs that they're linked with all the other gang members that have all been part of this programming for society. You know, the 50s with Elvis, all the way through with the Stones and into the 70s. You see how all society changed, the values and everything. You know, it's very strange. It's called progression, but does it look like we've progressed? We've
Well,
got
do you know
today, but does it progress?
what you were saying about reality tests? Effectively, you can't make head and tail of why people aren't able to reality test. But that's because your brain's ability to reality test is still intact. And for most people who can't do that, they require some sort of cataclysm to happen in their life, some catastrophe to shake them. Because and this is where suffering was prominent in many, not just Christian tradition. I mean, suffering of Job, Jesus Christ, all the suffering. Suffering is redemptive. But even in Buddhism, there's all this focus on suffering because, you know, if you've got a toothache, I mean, you can relate to this, Paul.
Whoa, hang on. Vietnam flashback there.
Yeah, it makes you aware. It gives you a very powerful, visceral experience. It says, "Hey, up, there's something happening."
Yeah, one way of putting it.
This is why, unfortunately, humans often need a heavy dose of pain and a lot of pain over a long period of time before they start saying, "Oh, Ralph, try blaming that person in this situation, and that prime minister, and that politician, and that evil person, and that licorice all sorts."
And it's yes to all of the above.
Yeah, all that, but it's me reacting to that, and ultimately,
But sometimes it affects you so badly. You know, you know what these situations are like. It can affect a man or a woman so badly. The fear of the knock on the door, the what's coming through the letterbox, and it's when you can pay it, it's fine. But you're still adding to the initial problem, which is making the debt worse without even knowing it.
Yeah.
So when they turn around and say, "Look, you owe us this, but I paid for my house." Yeah, but you've got this share of this massive debt, so we're going to take the equity in your house, but you can stay in it and rent it off us. It's a massive grab for everything because they're all in now, mate. Like I said, 10 years ago, with the people that were doing not just what we were doing, but other people, there was some magnificent work being done, but there was individuals doing this. You know, we could go endlessly on people who've done stuff. But there was many people who went into commercial courtrooms and said, "I'm a man and I've no contract." Okay, well, are we going to pay this? You know, it made another case that you had to get over before you could present your own. So there was a lot of stumbling blocks thrown before us because we had them tied up in so many ways because people were starting to ask questions of a system nobody does. Because if we ever get sucked into that system, we're taught we've got to go to a solicitor. And they're signed up to the system and they stay within their boundaries and do the guidance and are told what to do with us. So you're up against a rigged table, you know, you're playing a game here.
Paul,
And people just don't learn it. Go on.
just looking here at the chat, the Jackie K says, "Put a house in private trust." Now, you commented on this, and it's topical in a way because that might let's just say you could do that and that work. I don't think you think it would.
No, it plays their game because they can only speak to the trust, so they can't grab hold of anything as per. But whether that's a sealer, I don't know. It's certainly a good stumbling block. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody knows how to do it. You know, there's if it's so, it can't be too complicated because I've learned after 15 years in this, if you keep it simple, you're going to be right. If you start getting into an argument, you're in trouble. But this is where I knew you were up for it, Alex, because we're going in with remedy.
Yeah,
Other people were trying to do remedy, but they were. It was like some of the stuff that absolutely squashed the claims in the county courts, but because they were so adamant they were staying in the county court, it was like the FA. It was like the FA going into the FA arguing about rugby. They couldn't hear you, and legally they could stand under that. So from that, what it needed was organisation. Remember, Angie mentioned about David wanting 3,000 people to go to the local constabularies
yeah,
because it would show we've had enough. But
yeah.
one man walking in with a notice, where's that gone when you've turned round? Staff room, dartboard, we don't know. This is what they've done to us because they're in a position where they think they're untouchable.
Well,
They've had a wobble. They've had a
Steve,
wobble, mate. But we decided they're all in now. So, people are going to have to get their hands dirty. Learn the stuff that would be remedy. Don't follow what people, get information from what people have done, but don't just go and follow them. See what they've done, why they did it, and what it was. All I could say is a court clerk told me I've got a remedy when that's what he told the magistrate who asked what a bill of exchange was. Said that's a civil remedy we don't deal with. I got remedy. That's what he said. So
it's an interesting point here, Paul. I think we should put remedies in full context. So, like Steve Williams on the chat here said the cracks are showing now at the top. People are switching on, says myself included. And I agree. It takes a number of bad experiences before you see the world for what it is. Now, you can connect that to personal awareness through suffering, which is what Steve's speaking about, reinforcing the point I'm making. The other side of the crack showing is that if you look at warfare, if you had a Central European country that was being attacked from three sides, it's much harder. If you've just been attacked from one side, you can post all your troops to deal with that one threat. But if you post your troops to repel that threat, maybe even invade that country, your flanks are exposed. So if you've got three different threats all around you, these are the kind of things that over time will break down even the most monolithic, we've got a special word from Michel Foucault, hegemonic, totally dominant control grid that they're aiming for. Even that can be broken down and the cracks can appear. So coming back to remedy, what needs to happen, it seems to me, right? Last week we talked about awareness versus activism. So activism is that small band of courageous people who through circumstance or just sheer fed upness or a sense of divine calling or whatever decide to set off on this path, sometimes unsupported, going into the lion's den sometimes on their own and fighting the battle, right? That takes a lot of courage. Some people are going to have to do it. But as with armies, not all people are called to do it. You have your generals, your foot soldiers, various, sections of a military force that you mobilize. So we've got to look at it that the awareness side of it is also important. Our own personal awareness, talking with others, this type of influence. I think we need a mix. So it's an attack on several fronts because obviously this system is on a policy level, it's cascading down these policies from the World Economic Forum, United Nations Sustainable Development. They're working directly with local councils who are just implementing these policies, but not coming through national government looking the other way. So we're actually
we mustn't forget common purpose as well.
Yeah, well, exactly. They're all in place. These quangos and stuff are working to undermine. If we get obsessed with that, right, we'll just disempower ourselves. We can't stop them doing what they're doing. So the problem is there's something hypnotic about it. When we reprise it over and over again, yeah, it's true. What we need to do is work out what's going on and then almost forget about it. And then say, but what are we doing? Because if all we do is lament what they're doing, there won't be any remedy in that. We'll just be in their energy signature, but we'll be reacting to what they're doing. That'll make us powerless. We need to acknowledge what they're doing and then move on swiftly. And then we ourselves, we need to do what we can do. And sometimes that'll be in groups. Obviously, Keir and Co are going to, clamp down on group activity, people coming together on social media, try and shut that down. They don't want mass action, but we can still do some. But it's essentially, it's going to be individuals. Like when we took on UW,
that's the point, Alex. If those individuals can't organise to where there's no arguing, they've got a common purpose against it, this common purpose, like the People's Shadow Council. That's an idea that I thought, oh, that's got some bite, because we look at the cabinet and we look at the budget they're going to put out. Well, the shadow cabinet will have the same. So it needs to see. Well, they can say, well, you've spent money on this, and we've not spent that. So this is a tip for us. It's better. Well, it's the same. It's the same that's going on.
The problem with it, Paul, is this. It's called piecemeal social order. So people have spoke about this, like philosophers and so on and so forth, one of them being Karl Popper. Just so I'd mention that for Edward Crumble-You and anybody else who's watching who knows the Popper in joke there. But you get these piecemeal social orders that are planned, like communist social order. The problem is all planned social orders, all planned movements, they either get co-opted or they become tyrannical. So there was a guy called Michael Polanyi in the early 1970s, a philosopher. He talked about spontaneous social order. So if you remember what happened in Ireland, yeah, we had all this talk about the peace plan and the peace process, and Tony Blair and John Major and getting all these plaudits as if they brokered something. Essentially, the time was ripe because for the best part of a century, people in Ireland had just got sick of the bloodshed. In the end, there's only so much bloodshed you can take before everyone says, enough is enough. And it's at that critical moment when enough people en masse spontaneously say, that's it. The order just seems to arise automatically. If you tried to plan it, if you tried to micromanage all the details of people becoming aware, coming together, planned action, it'd get shut down, co-opted, or implode. Very rarely does that type of thing work out. And if it happens at the level of the state, it becomes tyranny and oppression. Like with communism, that's what we're having imposed on us now. It's communism under a green ideology. I think Keir has signed up to the Green New Deal. So they're all full on board now with this communist agenda. And the state has the power to impose that tyranny. We don't. So I think we've got to look at creating a groundswell of awareness and fighting this on many levels, including being creative. We've got to be creative about it as well.
In what way? In what way? Because people, like I say, at the moment, there's enough people still distracted. It's hard to figure out sometimes just how many people are aware of certain things. We discussed over the weekend that many things that we see now that is coming up, what people are talking about, saying no contracts, all this stuff, we knew 10 years ago wasn't the key. There is no contract. It's right, but it doesn't mean anything. It's like the time where the guy put the birth certificate on the desk and wouldn't say anything, and they found him, guilty in his absence, did business anyway, and fined him 900 quid, and he said nothing. I thought, well, if I don't go, I'm never going to get information for myself. Do you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people who say they won't go to court, and I thought, well, if I don't go and have ammunition in their court, I'm not going to learn anything. And what you learn straight away is when you went in with the actual stuff, it flabbergasted them. They didn't know what to do with it because nobody does this. Yeah. Like I said, it wasn't just us. It was many others up and down the country who were making this racket saying, you can't do what you've been doing. And then all of a sudden, those people were looking back in history, what has gone on in history, what people have gone through, and this has all been put on people. Some of it's been experimentation. All that's kind of come out, hasn't it? In the 1930s, some villages sprayed with something as an experiment. All that's declassified, but they wouldn't do it again, and it wouldn't happen here. And it's this apathy. How do we keep falling into this, apathetic thing and nobody going, what's really going on in this world? Because, I've been at a wonderful family gathering, and when the conversations go about politics, much of it is what was on the BBC, and it's just saying what they said. You've got to go deeper. It's the same as voting for Labour because my dad did. You've got to go deeper. If you find that the two wings of the same bird, you're just going to get crapped on. It's the same thing. Where does the line get drawn? Where, right, I know now that's corrupt.
Right.
What should I do? We're all been in that situation because, well, we'll just keep going. Then it comes knocking on the door. What do you do? you can't, I was taught if I thought I'm right and I didn't think I could see I was right about this, that they can't do this. At the very outset, you're offering me a service, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal. I don't want your service. They said I've got to have their service, and then our police make sure that I'm good in the. What's going on? It's you don't see B&Q's manager coming out dragging you in to make you buy hammers and nails, do you? So
No.
there was something rotten in right at the beginning of that court system, and then it was only then you saw from how many other people up and down the country, and then the world as well. You see the Dean Cliffords, and we were talking about Rob Menard, who've gone head to head with people. These people suffered to try and show this stuff off.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people to swallow because it's easier to fool people than to show them how they've been fooled. I understand that statement now because that's where I was, mate. I weren't interested. But when I get an interest in something, if it doesn't make sense or if it makes sense to go, no, that can't be true, and I know it so I investigate it. And then if I get to, well, it's neither even there, nobody knows. So you categorize it. So you don't need it, but you put it away. It's information. That's why when I went into the courts, I needed to know what went on in there, how they worked it, and see the pomp, and then see grown men shuffle paperwork saying, I'm not going to speak to you anymore, when you clearly have got a remedy. That it's strange. So
Well,
I was never, we were, even though we were stood there like, shaking like shitting dogs inside, but it wasn't a fearful thing to be there because you knew you were right. It's
right.
just the system's that used to getting its own way. They didn't know what to do other than to shut you down. And
Right,
that's the
so
basic thing where we are. That's why we needed numbers, mate.
I want to ask you a question now because I think it's an important question and it might open things up a little bit more because we've got to keep pulling these different strands together to make them coherent so we can actually do stuff about things. Would you say that this path that you've been on now for a number of years, let's say, Paul, would you say that you chose this path or this path chose you?
Well, my decisions put me on this path, but I didn't know where it would lead.
Yes.
Certainly didn't think it would lead to where I'm at.
But
it's been the toughest time in my life.
Yeah, yeah.
In the last 10, 15 years, it's been bloody tough.
So the path, in a way, you made decisions. There were certain consequences that rebounded back on you. But then the path chose you. The point I'm getting at here is you don't even need to talk about God. Like, say, for example, a person has a downer on religion, Christianity, whatever. They've had some bad experiences. They believe it's all hogwash.
That's a Catholic. You just described a Catholic to me.
Well, possibly.
All the atheists I know, most of them were ex-Catholics.
Well, let's just say, though, like, you just leave God out of it and just say, well, let's just say you didn't choose this path, but this path chose you. In other words, it came to you. It came and looked for you. It forced you. The issues that happened forced you to confront. Now, my argument here is psychologically.
It confronts you. It confronts you at your very core. Because my earliest memories was what my mum taught me.
Right.
And my mum wouldn't lie to me. And yet here I am living. Look, everybody's going to be living or are living in poverty, many people. And that is because of how we've been acting. We've taken our eye off the ball because we're taught to look somewhere else.
Yeah, of course.
That unravelled everything, mate. That's the honest part of it. It unravelled everything. Like I said, when I told people the gas were free, that's when they thought I'd gone nuts.
Yeah, yeah. But here's the point, mate, right? You said it confronted you at your core. Now, let's imagine that we knew what the core of a person is. Because all that is, right, Paul, let's just get right about it. It's metaphorical language. We've got to talk like that. We talk about our core, but we don't really know what our core is. Then religion will say, oh, spirit or soul or whatever, but it doesn't really matter what it is. We have to use words to describe what it is. You were confronted at your core. right? Now, philosophers call it an existential crisis. In other words, from the point of view of your consciousness, the number of paths, there might have been 100 different paths you could have meandered down, right? And it would have been like, oh, if you flick a coin a few times, I'll just do it randomly, I'll choose a path. There was no great pressure upon you to make a choice. There was no great G-force applied in your life. There was nothing pulling you apart. But when you're confronted at that level, whether you call it soul, spirit, the essence of you, the heart of you, received an existential call from wherever it was, say from suffering, from circumstance. Or then you could say, well, actually, it was God working through circumstance. Until something breaks in, call it the light, breaks into my conscious experience and confronts my soul. But when it does, you have no option. Look at what happened when we had to take on you. Both decided, we both understood that to walk away was not feasible, because if we did, something more important would die. So it's all about values. That it's like everything becomes do or die. I've got to fight this battle. I can't dodge this battle. I didn't seek this battle. This battle came to my door. So although it's not something we desire, it sharpens us. It calls to us and it says, what are you going to do about this? See, because all these problems and crises out there that don't really affect me, you can have an opinion about them, and you can have a million different opinions about a million different things. But the things that galvanize people are the things that affect them. So when it comes to you and confronts your soul, makes you authentically respond, then you're going to trust. What you're going to trust? Your conviction. I've got to do something about this. I can't afford not to. It's life or death. And you can say that's God. You can say it's something else. But people need to get there, and they need to have an authentic response to that and say, no more. I'm drawing a line here, and I'm not crossing it, and I'm not letting anyone else cross it. Too many people have had the luxury for too long in Western culture with Western freedom, and we've taken our freedoms for granted, and that's why they're being taken away from us. So we've now got to step up and fight for our freedom, but not necessarily in the aggressive use of the word fight. Just act like it matters. Have a bit of passion. When you get up in the morning, what am I going to do in my life today? I'm not going to settle for second best. That's been knocked out of us. That's what we need back.
It's because, Alex, because nobody knows what to do. Everybody's torn to shreds. Everybody's beaten up from all kinds of sides.
Demoralised.
The thing is, what you do see is, because I see it in my local community, when things go wrong, people do have a tendency to come together out of nowhere. But it's got to be seen. It's got to, we're starting with a bit of a gang. And it's all about knives and intimidation and stuff like that. It started with stealing bikes off kids. The police don't want to know. What do you do? It's everybody's going. It's his fault. It's their fault. It's this councillor's fault. It's Keir Starmer's fault. What? They know that we can't organise. So what do you do when people can't see what's going on? It's got to come to them, and then it's how they react. Because on an individual basis, people just go off on one. We've had one poor lad recently who went into his own house and started to demolish it because the courts were going to take it off him for no reason. This is driving people to the extremes. Where do people draw the line? You see people now, 70 people turning up to an eviction to stop these people. We don't know, it's like playing a cat and mouse game. What's their next move? What are they going to do? They're coming with the right paperwork, but they're not acting correctly. They're using police, and the police don't know what to do. They're doing what they're told. So it's pitting everybody against each other. Everybody's pointing to who it is, whose fault it is, and people are just running away with it. It's how do you explain all that? Because I don't know if you heard, but I think Oasis might be going back together. I've heard a story.
Well, there you go. Yeah, but trauma, the impact of trauma fundamentally affects the central nervous system, leads to fight or flight, freeze or fawn responses just to survive. So I still think it's about talent. Yeah, people are confused. They don't know what to do, as Ed rightly points out in the chat. We're demoralised. We're attacked on all sides. So we've got to acknowledge and have compassion for the condition that we're all in. But I think if you look at the difference between a good comedian and a crap one, you know, a lot of these PC comedians were coming out telling PC jokes, and they always flop because they're rubbish. They're just not funny. They've been so emasculated that they're not allowed to say anything. They can't say anything risky. They can't have an edge. But if you're talented,
comedy used to be cutting, didn't it? Comedy would pick on everything.
Yeah.
Because that's the only forum that we would have accepted it. If you don't like that type of thing, you didn't go. But now, nobody can like it. Well, what do you mean nobody can like it? And then you chastise or ostracize people who do like it. It's the same what they did with the vaccines and the masks and the 6 feet apart. It pitted people against people. You know, you had security, you know, Ghanaian security guards rugby tackling people because they're going in for the groceries. You know, we can't have that. But that's what people felt that they had the power to do all of a sudden. You know, again, I'm not saying that that's a trauma thing, but all of that psychology being given to somebody, all of a sudden they're out overstepping the boundary. Do you remember all the experiments where they put some college students as prisoners and some as staff, and how it came about in the prison? All of a sudden, this fella started dominating and making them do press-ups and all this kind of stuff. It's people change under these kind of pressures, and the psychologists know it from a long time ago. They know within 2 weeks you can turn somebody cannibalistic under the right set of circumstances.
Not me, mate.
You get the Tavistock.
I'll never be tearing a strip off of you, Paul, and eating it. Sorry, mate. It's not going to happen. But
then you get the Tavistock Institute that is plugged into all the politics, who program everybody with the education system. You don't think that they put thought into this, but Oasis are getting back together. It's bonkers. You know, I keep seeing in the chat room that there's so many rabbit holes. Didn't you say, Alex, that you wanted to start to bring those threads in that people can start to see? Because it's like grains of sand, isn't it? That it's falling through your fingers now. You know, how much longer can it last? We're printing money. You know, America's in the trillions. The dollar goes. What happens to the rest of it? What's backing the pound? What labour have we? We've sacked all the middle class with no businesses. We've got the working poor and the rich. And, you know, I've got a local councillor saying, hey, we've got so much gold. And then he names that it's in the Bank of England. So that's not our gold. So we've got nothing. Yet there's people who think that we're going to be, you know, we've got to, like, make sure we're going to be okay and go and check this stuff. But doing it individually, you can't do. Individually coming together could, but we can't do it because we're spread quite far apart. If it weren't for the internet and communication like this, we would have struggled. It's because COVID woke a lot of people because of the, you know, boredom. They were sat at home, and then they realised things were going wrong.
Yeah,
you know, all of a sudden the society had changed. Very strange, isn't it? Oh, 4 years to change society like that, lad.
Well, the thing is, like, so most contemporary bureaucracies have got human resource managers and human resource departments, which is quite funny because at the end of the day, you know, the clue's in the title, human resources. Like even gold, without human beings to mobilize gold and its value, gold is worthless. You know, I used to do astrology in the past, right? But if there's no humans to look at the planets, there's no astrology. So the point is, all resources really are deployed by humans. We're just the vehicle through which resources get deployed. But people look at the resource and go, "Oh, look, it's a resource." But it's only a resource because it's connected to a human that uses the resource. The human being is the fount of all resources. But we forget this because we think a resource is something that's out there. So if we don't understand that we are our own biggest resource, that's why coming together, like I just noticed the Wigan Joker's on. Did someone say on PC comedian? Well, we need to get him on. We need the Wigan Joker to tell us a few un-PC jokes. As long as he doesn't say anything that gets you a YouTube strike, we'll be right. But we need to have a laugh, don't we? We need, like, for example, life is so serious now. The crap that's going down is going to drive anyone bonkers. We need to be able to do light-hearted, but not in a way that's frivolous. We need to do light-hearted in a way that's productive. We need to put each other at ease. We need to be able to have basic human camaraderie. People used to gather around fires and have a great time. They didn't need all this tech. I'm not down on tech. Tech's got its place. But there are more primitive things that humans have always shared in, and we're losing touch with that. And we've got to, it's like, yeah, find human resources is quite a dystopian term, I agree. Yeah, he's not wrong. But yeah, I think we need that basic human connection. And if we achieve nothing else via these podcasts, Paul, for all the truth that we might expose, for all the remedies that we might make clear to people, we are our biggest resource. When we come together and we talk about things that matter, there's a chance for that. I hate the word energy, because it's tedious, isn't it? But to grow that energy in a way that we share, we build. It's like planting a seed in the ground. Each week we come and we do this and we make it more authentic, more real. Send people away having real conversations with their friends and neighbours and family. We've got to see ourselves as a hub, be as creative as we can, deal with our own shit, and continue to try and maximise our own life. Because if we don't do that, we have a problem.
I think we've got a problem.
We've got a problem. So we need to remedy the problem on every type of level. We need the technical.
Remedy, I like that word.
Yeah, technical instruments of remedy for specific specialised situations and strike some blows for truth. And we need a general remedy of raising the awareness and action, getting the balance right between them. I still want the wicked joker to come on and tell us a few jokes. Yeah, exactly. Well, Timothy says people need to stop trying to force people to wake up like a cult. That's a really good point, actually, from Timothy. And that would be that point about a planned social order, because anything can be turned into a tyranny just because we're desperate for it to happen. You can be so desperate that you can trip yourself up. But the point is, how do we get to be relaxed? We've somehow got to be in the face of really serious circumstances that are challenging us and threatening our well-being and our life chances. We've somehow got to remain composed. Hi, Owen, by the way. Good comment there. Yeah, we're just making a difference by doing this and getting people involved. So, yeah, we've got to maximise everything that we can. But our biggest resource is our full-fledged humanity, functioning and operating at the highest level. I said many a time, not operating like a chimpanzee, operating at our full potential and maximise it, develop yourself, grow, study, read, anything. And when I talked about the path calling you, right, so it chose you, you didn't choose it. If you feel a calling in your life, comes into your heart, into your mind, and you just can't shake it off, don't shrink back, see it through, even if it's only one thing, even if it's taking the council to task about your council task, asking some difficult questions, engaging in some dialogue with them, anything, because we've got to start somewhere. Anything that occurs to you that you're passionate about, do it. Because it's because we keep sitting there on the fence saying someone needs to do it. We're hypnotizing ourselves. Let's choose small projects, make small gains, because we'll get confidence. Like when we beat UW, Paul, it was grueling. But how satisfying it is when you take a corporate down with truth. So it can be done, and we need to practice, because if you don't practice, if Usain Bolt had never done his sprinting and all the stuff that led up to his Olympic goal when he was in the spotlight, he wouldn't have won an Olympic gold. So the journey of 1,000 miles, not to spout too many cliches, begins with the first step. So if we've got a passion and a conviction, right, talk to some friends about it. I'm going to do this. I want to start doing this. Will you offer me some support, even as a cheerleader from the sidelines? I'm going to take this council on. I'm going to challenge this issue here. I'm going to get involved locally. And your talk tomorrow, very much community assemblies, Hapton again, trying to mobilise people on the ground to start being active and do what they can in the community.
Do you know what, Alex? I wouldn't even, like I said, I don't even go that far. Learn what's gone on. Understand that something is taught to you that is wrong. It would make your life very different. When you look at your wages, council tax, gas, water and electric must go out of that. If you didn't have to pay that right now, that would make a real difference. And there's a reason why you shouldn't pay it. It's the brainwashing. It's the programming. Everybody pays. Everybody knows that. That was the unraveling bit. So it's not about going and doing something, because you've got to learn about what is going on first. There's no magic button for this, particularly anymore. If the magic button was there, it would have been done because we went in with the remedy. If you'd have gone in, the judge's gone, oh, yes, I recognise that. Yes, you can set that off. Oh, thank you, sir. Done. But that would mean a big change for everybody, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
This is where people back then was asking questions like, well, did you get a piece of paper saying your gas is free? Silly questions like that, instead of going reading and saying things like, well, I've got a life. Well, where you at now? Unless you're doing really, really well, you're not struggling yet. But I know many people who are struggling, and I know many people who are worried about struggling.
Yeah.
And they keep telling you that it's coming. I've just seen an article. It was only fleeting. I've not looked at it, but they were after your cats. Then now they're after your chickens. Even if you've got a budget, it should be registered. And now they're looking at dogs. Where do you draw the line? And what do you do about it? The way to do it would be to reject these policies, not organise a protest, turn up at these meetings and with the right legal jurisdiction, but they're not recognising it because they're not taught to recognise it. They're taught to act in certain ways and they've got certain powers, but that's a jurisdictional thing. We don't know how to act correctly, so they act on presumption. So it's like a pantomime. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it isn't. And once you learn that, it'll slow you down and you can see, okay, I can't do this at the moment. What can I do? Because that's why we started this podcast. To me, mate, it was therapy.
Yeah.
It was therapy to get this out because, there's only so many people that want to keep hearing that, yeah, your gas is free. Banks don't lend money. There's only so many people that want to hear that in real life. But if the message can drop onto somebody who, how many people do you know, Alex, who have blamed themselves for being in the position of debt that they're in when they've struggled and they paid?
Yeah.
What that poor lady who paid 25 years of mortgage, they're struggling because of COVID, all the prices going up, bedridden with stage 4, and they carry her out the house. What's going on? What as a society, where do people draw the line where enough's enough? We go back to the Martin Niemöller quote, well, that didn't happen to me, so I said nothing.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at people said he'll come on. So Jimmy said he'll come on soon and he promises with a kiss as well. He's given us a kiss. That's a proper pledge, that is, if he's put a kiss on it. Thanks, Jimmy. We'll look forward to that. But also we've got Timothy said he can come on. So then I've seen your comment here, Paul.
Yeah, he'll come out. He'll come on every bloody week, Taylor, mate.
Well, I don't know. Actually, you know people. I don't. So
you do. You spoke to him last week in Washington State.
Oh, was that Timothy?
I don't know why he's calling himself that.
So I don't know who's who. You see,
you met him last week. He's a knobhead.
Bless him.
Indeed.
I'm just looking at these comments at the moment, Paul. Just having a check.
Jimmy, you can come. Where are you coming?
Is he coming on?
Oh, you coming on? Well, we've done an hour, mate. Do you want me to open it up?
Yeah, why not? Just yeah. Have we got any other takers?
Don't know. I can only host so many anyway.
He's on now, he says.
I've not sent him link. He's not in green room.
Right, hold on. He's saying link me. Right.
What have you done?
He said link me.
Do you want me to put it in the chat room or just send it to Jimmy?
Send it to Jimmy for now.
Me too. Well, don't leave her time, mate. Say something.
Well, is he coming on?
I've got to send it in, but do some talking, mate. Can never normally shut you up.
Well, I thought I'd give you a chance, pal.
Well, I'm doing something, sending a link
We're just trying to get
on a different screen, mate.
want to get more get as much engagement as we can, because us, we could talk the hind legs off a donkey, Paul. So we want to stop for breath and give people a chance to add their wisdom to the proceedings.
I know.
At the end of the day,
I'm on a different screen, so talk for us.
we got to put our money where our mouth is, actually. And I mean, I don't know how far you can take something like this and turn it into a true community. I mean, I can't see, because I'm not on the YouTube, I can't see how many people are on at the moment. Yeah, he's coming on. He says one tick. So, yeah, but I think...
45, mate.
Say again?
45.
All right, that's pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, if what's happening on Wednesday? Are you on this thing with Verbs?
Yes. It's recorded on Wednesday. It's only recorded on Wednesday. I think he said it's the Thursday it'll go out.
So, well, we've just notified 50 people now. Can you put the link to that on the YouTube?
I've not got a link to it. I haven't got a link to it, mate.
Right.
He said he'll send me the. He said he'll send me the Zoom link on Wednesday. So, but Richard's going to be at. I forget the name of the cricket club in Burnley. If you go onto the People's Shadow Council site, you'll see that Richard Vobes is appearing there with some others on a Sunday. I think it's £15 donation fee into that. So, get along there if you can.
Yeah. Well, how many has he got on his channel?
I don't know, mate. Somebody said that up to I don't know how many subscribers he's got, but there's a regular 50,000 looking at his videos, they said. So all I can do is put the information out there that there's a remedy that the courts are ignoring. What are you going to do about it? You were talking earlier about somebody's got to do something because you get into that position. Well, like I've said many times, my mum taught me that if you believe you're right, stand up for yourself. When I stood up for myself, I had armed police called on me for standing up for myself and asking the correct question. That was very strange to me. Then when I knew I was in for a fight with the house, along comes that I shouldn't be paying these bills. I've been taught wrong. And my mum taught me that on top of everything. This is overwhelming stuff. You can't just come along and say, oh, what do? Just do this. This is bloody, everybody who's gone through this stuff, it's the hard lessons. There's no magic remedy.
Oh, he's saying he needs a link again.
I've sent it to your Facebook, mate. Where do you want me to send it, Jim?
$226,000, says Owen. So, and that's interesting, right? Because multiple tens of thousands could be getting the message that your gas is free. What you need to do, I believe Jimmy developed that jingle at the beginning. You need to get that on. I tell you what, because that's so catchy. If people hear that your gas is free, it's going to be properly. We're singing it all the time, Paul. Me, Angie, and Ed. And others when we're hanging out, we're all singing the gas is free. So the point is, with these jingles, they make a big difference because they get into people's heads. Because you could say your gas is free, right? Loads. And if people got like a disconnect, it might not get past it. But when you hear that tune at the beginning and at the end, it really has an impact. So if you could get that on, it'd be brilliant. So this is my jingle for me show.
Keep talking, Alex. I'm trying to do something.
Forbes gets loads of trolls trying to discredit everything. Well, I'm not surprised with 226,000 subscribers. Oh, Jackie doesn't trust Forbes. Apparently, he's always throwing Masonic signs.
Hello. Hello.
It's the tattoo millionaire.
Hey, all right.
I'm not on the stream yet for ages. I forgot how you use it. Hello, good evening, Alex. Good evening, Webby.
Your hair looks great, mate.
I've actually watched it tonight.
Hey,
so
Jimmy.
Everybody's in for hello, Alex. Everybody's in for a treat because I've washed my hair.
You took your curlers out then, lad.
No, I've actually. If you leave your, I've discovered if you leave your hair wet and don't the curls, it gets more curly for anybody. Yeah, where we are, gas free.
Gas is always free, that you know, son.
I'm just looking at your top there, Jimmy. Your blue top. And your facial structure's a bit like Alan Wells. Do you remember the Scottish sprinter that won the Olympics? Was it in 1980 or something?
My physique isn't like Alan Wells, but I get too many things. I get Nigel from EastEnders. I get James May, Brian May. I'm all things to all men, I think. But,
yeah,
Alex, I just think you have a great point about through all this madness, it's important to stay creative.
Yeah, totally.
All I can say is my head fell off this year, really, with what was going on. It's the first year I've actually taken into account everything that's going on and looking around me, seeing things change in a bad way. And my head, it just really got to me. But I've just thrown myself into creative writing, and it's been like
therapy.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important to do that. But I fell into the habit of the Facebook world, and you get drawn into all the diatribe, and you end up kind of locked into it, scrolling, and just your brain's just getting dopamine, and that's all it is. So I've put my phone down. No, I was doing like kind of 10 hours a day on a phone, and it's disgusting. And it's like
I've had several brews with you, mate.
Well, yeah, but basically I've cut it down to it's like cutting down on cigs. I've got down to 5 hours now, so you know what I mean. I want to get down further, kind of thing. But thank you for having me on board.
When's your next gig?
12th of Never. They don't have me anymore, do they?
Did they not? Well, tell us about that then.
Well,
he's a controversial lad. He's controversial, this fella.
Good.
Well, I ended up on the front page of the newspaper. Did you not know that? It's an old story, but you've asked, so I've always been one to ruffle feathers, and I never. As soon as I started in an alternative comedy, I never toed the line, and things were more when I started. That was 15 years ago, and things were more lenient then. And what happened was, I've been jabbing at Wigan Council for years in videos and having a go at them.
Good.
And there was this particular time they said we can't empty the bins now, and every 2 weeks with no money. Well, it's 3 weeks now, your bin collection.
Yeah.
And my friend at the time, I can say now he's passed away, Paul Maiden, and the council said, well, they're giving thousands to Gay Pride. So I made this video. And to be honest with you, it wasn't that funny. It was just kind of anyway. And I just said, look,
made me laugh.
I said, you've no money to empty the bins, but you've got money for Gay Pride. I said, I've got a solution. I said, get the fucking gays to empty the bins, and that's all I said. Right, front page paper, double page spread. Donna Hall, Lisa Nandy, everybody. He's a dinosaur. He's bitter and twisted. And good night. And I struggled for gigs before that, but as soon as that happened, it was. But you know, you live by the sword, you die by it. Do I regret it? No, I honestly don't regret it. You know what I mean? Because to survive in comedy, and you just have to become a complete sellout, don't you? You know what I mean? And you can't have any opinions of your own.
You've had a glimpse into the darker side of it, though, haven't you? The glimpse into the darker side of showbiz, the shuffling, the handshakes that go on behind the gigs, all that kind of stuff.
it's just basically compliance. The whole entertainment, as the world is built on compliance, and the more you comply, the further up the ladder you go. If you don't comply, you just cast out, and that's in every field. But I think it's in entertainment. I think it's more evident of that. The agents would rather, and the agents would rather have an act that is less talented and completely controllable than a maverick who's uncontrollable. And that, if you look at modern entertainment now and the caliber of it, the comedians aren't very good. And even my friends are film directors, and said, look at the state of actors now. The old standards have dropped because
difference, isn't it? It's really different. All the films are.
One of the things as well, people have got used to watching viral rubbish, like TikTok, Facebook, and all these videos are made basically by attention-seeking, mentally ill narcissists, and you get. This is what society's become. If you could write a brilliant song, it might have taken you a year to write it.
Yeah.
You put that on TikTok, you look at get 300 views. You get some overweight fucking Chinese man in a nappy jumping up and down in a baking tray full of piss, and it'll get like 8 million views and 8 million followers, and we're kind of like rolling back. We're devolving as a species, and that's my thoughts.
Some areas can't afford that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
Webby, if you want more views, Webby, put a nappy on.
Yeah, but you did. Hey, your gas is free. That's a cracking tune.
Yeah, it was a little jingle we wrote for him.
What was your inspiration? Where did you come up with that?
Just you get your gas. Just melodies come in your head. When I used to write songs, it used to be like you'd follow the chord structures on the guitar, and that kind of stopped when I wrote that Clot Shot. You know, I was studying kitchen at Kuka, and that come in my head. Give me my vaccine, clap.
Ed, the moderator in the chat room, fell in love with that song when I sent it.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And it just came into my head as a melody. And my friend John Ulton helped me. I don't know if he's watching, but The Gas is Free was a similar thing. My friend Christopher David, a musician, and his grandson Kenzie Cooper played on it, and they laid it down. And I'm proud to say it's an addition to the Webster report. You know what I mean?
Hey,
it's very welcome. It's getting stuck in people's heads, mate.
Well,
I rolled up at Angie's on Friday afternoon. They're all humming it.
Yeah.
No, it's and when I put it's a weird one. When I put it on my YouTube, it got removed. I remember Raconteurs played it and nothing was said, was it?
No, it's on BitChute.
Yeah. I've had about 4,000 views on BitChute, you know. But as we know, it was a very strange time in history we was alive through. It was bizarre.
When did you open up to all this? Because I mean, once upon a time, you was as closed off as what I was. You know, you were all focused on certain things, but I always had questions about stuff. We've talked about this.
It's a weird one, this, because when I was a kid, I remember reading about the Illuminati, and I was sending off for all these magazines like the Order of the Golden Dawn and Porcelain. and then I just forgot. I just forgot about it all.
Well, you could have been a black magician all along.
And then I met Paul Maiden, and was it 40, I'd say. And he posted a thing on his Facebook. Look at the chemtrails today. I was, what? He goes, look, these are really bad chemtrails today. And it was like, what? He says, look, see them planes in the sky? You see them emissions? It's barium salts now. Right, okay. And then he piled loads more on me. And then you find out the World Economic Forum and the Bill Gates and everything. And fucking hell.
I remember when we first met up, and you were in the middle of all down them rabbit holes.
And
12 years ago, that was like what, 2012?
It was about 14 years ago, and then you can't look at a triangle You look at you open really triangles. Well, why the triangular shape? I mean, this has got to be like a conspiracy.
They're going a bit further, mate.
Well, you know what I mean. You can get so drawn into it. If you see an advert with a checkerboard floor like the old Flash advert, you think, well, I'm thinking back was the Flash advert that was Freemasonic, and you get really drawn into it. And the best advice I ever got was actually off Paul Maiden. He says, you have to at some point put it back on the shelf, or you'll just go mad. Yeah, because every day, every month, there'll be a new conspiracy. And you sit them all down, and you can't join the dots. Saying, well, if they hate us so much and they depopulated us, well, why is there a National Health Service? So why don't they just let us all die? And I was thinking, and then I'd start, and it does actually send you quite mad. So at some point, you have to kind of put it on the shelf. Although you're taking everything, and that doesn't mean discard it. You know what's going on.
Yeah.
And, it is frustrating, especially now. I mean, I told everybody. You used to see people on Facebook saying, "Sod the Tories, vote Labour," and say you clearly don't have an understanding of the political system. That it's actually one entity. It's just two sides of one entity, and one has the illusion of being slapped. It's like somebody's going to slap your face, and somebody's going to.
Jimmy, you've no right of opinion. You've no right of opinion if you didn't vote.
I know. I didn't vote, but I kind of like thought.
There's no point. There's absolutely no point, and that's what we were talking about, because there's a certain type of trauma that you're following people who've been traumatized. So I knew a lot of people a long time ago. They voted Labour, and their honest answer was, "Well, my dad did." That was their honest answer because they trusted what the parents.
Well, can I tell you?
Was.
I stood as an independent candidate twice, and I remember going around Ince canvassing. And this particular occasion, I knocked on the door and I told the old woman I was standing. She goes, "Well, Labour have done a terrible job for this town, but I'm going to vote for them." and this is the man telling they're building. I'm not so keen on this gas chamber they're building, but I'll still vote for them. You know what I mean?
Imagine you went door to door going, "Hey, love, do you know your gas is free? Come here, let me tell you."
Webby, stand.
Mate, I've been with councillors. I've been with councillors and explained it and said, if you run on something like this, you want to expose what the council are doing, you need to learn about this stuff. You've got a platform. You know, that's all I'm saying. You've got the platform to tell people it's all right organising a protest, but a protest is a legal acceptance. You've got every right to go, "I don't want that." But at the end of the day, the Crispin Arms could end up being an HMO or any other thing could be getting changed.
I've got something interesting to tell you. Luke Marsden.
Hang on, is this breaking news?
It's conspiracy a bit. Luke Marsden from Wigan was in Big Brother a few years ago. You know what I mean? Look, anyway. And he had a column in the Wigan Today, and he was very opinionated. He didn't hold back, and he'd have quite a lot of run-ins with the editor. Now, recently, he was pictured with Maureen O'Byrne, the independent councillor, and she's been deemed and labelled right-wing because she's kind of questioning immigration. And after that picture was published, he lost his column. He lost his column in the newspaper.
It's because Maureen wants to do the right bloody thing. It can't be witnessed. That's what I'm saying. There's something wrong when media are shutting everything down. You can't get any remedies in courts. Council can seemingly do what they want. You know, everything's in chaos. They're putting traffic lights up anywhere. They're digging holes everywhere. And it's causing so much chaos. They're doing it at the right times, but they're the wrong times. They're shutting roads, they're shutting motorways. And on top of all that, with all the mental health issues, I don't think I see a day where somebody's not falling off something or taking their own lives or suddenly dying. You've got to think there's something not right. But
you know what?
Two Mancs are getting back together. It's all about this distraction. it's only short term, but it's enough.
But I've noticed how bad Wigan Town Centre has got for junkies and lowlifes. And I met Luke Marsden and another lad, and I said we'll meet near the face of Wigan, 10 o'clock, and it was near the John Bull Chop House in Wigan. I was sat on a bench. The area was full of junkies, and they started. And I've never seen. I was quite shocked. They started shooting up in a corner, and it's like this is Saturday morning, 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? And some more people were sat there, and they saw this and walked off. And that how depraved and how society has plummeted after that. That lockdown did a psychological number on everybody. I'm sure it created more junkies, alcoholics, but society's just, since then, we've got more angrier as a society. And we've got more debased as a society. And I know it's all planned. You know, it's just, what do you do about it? The police won't do anything about it. And
so what do you think? What role do you think, Jimmy, that it's like, I was going to ask you a question about, you know, you're talking about crap comedians, you know, in high places. What do you think of Stuart Lee?
I actually like him. He's not made it big though, has he? I know people. I've met people who know him, and they said like he's just a jobbing comedian in London, and even though he has a big name and stuff like that, I don't think he's made a lot of money. But then you get your John Bishops and your Michael McIntyres, you talk about biscuit crumbs, and the multimillionaires, you know, and see,
he sold his house to HS2, you know. John made a few quid on that, allegedly.
But it's just basic. Anybody who's a threat to the status quo doesn't last long. They're ostracised, and you know, I'm suspicious of David Icke. And Brian Harvey from East 17, you've seen him on the internet now. He's a complete basket case. He's paranoid. He lives in his nan's house with bars on window. He smokes weed all day, and his MI5's going to come and kill him. But even he came up with the nugget. He said if David Icke was such a threat to the status quo, they wouldn't let him rent Wembley. You know, they wouldn't give him that platform to do so. Do you not agree that? I just think he doesn't really offer. A lot of it's misery porn with David Icke, because to me, he doesn't offer a solution. He goes, "Oh yeah, in 10 years' time, you got to be." Well, even his thing, problem, reaction, solution, is a rip off of the Hegelian dialectic, isn't it? You know what I mean? He took that as his own.
His information, a lot of it checks out, but if there's an agenda, you know, whereas I would be talking about God and Christ, he always goes to the consciousness and all the new agey stuff, which I've been down that route. It did nothing for me. It changed nothing in my life. Yeah. So I could understand it up to a certain point. You look at the Committee of 300, things like that he spoke about in 612. You see all that stuff. You understand the energy stuff. You know, it's all the Tesla kind of things. So I was interested in all that. So you can't just ignore his information. But I think you've got to be. I think we've discussed it before, Jim. You've got to be wary of everybody on this playing field. You don't trust anybody. You go off what your information is, and you know you keep your friends close, don't you?
In the words of Bruce Lee, is it take what is useful to you, discard what isn't, and add what is essentially your own.
Yeah.
Spot on. But that's what we need, isn't it? We need people.
Sorry, Alex.
We need people who've individuated. I mean, the bottom line is, if you think about primitive societies, they were tribal, and there were certain advantages to being tribal, but there were certain disadvantages, and we had to develop a more individuated consciousness, which enables you to maximize your individual potential. That's talk about human resources, and like you were saying about human resources departments, it's like, yeah, anything but. It's like a dystopian concept now. But realistically, we are the resources. So if we maximize our potential, I mean, you could have 100,000 human beings functioning at the level of a chimpanzee, and not one of them will be able to develop society for everybody else. You only need one out of that 100,000 developing their own mind, becoming like a Tesla type character who can elevate the life prospects of the other 100,000. So if we all developed and made ourselves our more central project to unleash our creativity, like you were saying, Jimmy, be your individuated, unique, creative self, we would generate a lot more unique content, because these psychopaths, they're sterile and they can only control us because we buy into the sterility. If we individuate and really become creative, I don't think they'd be able to stem the tide, personally.
I like the idea you have of a creative hub. You know, I don't know if it will be orchestrated and stuff, but I do think it's a really good idea. It's vital people stay creative. During this, it's I've just found from my own experience, it's been so enriching and important to do so, other than just sitting on your phone going, "Oh, that's happening now." Well, Keir Starmer's just done. You know what I mean? And you're just feeding on that bad, which in turn feeds them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
I was saying when we started the show that every time I met up with you, you kept saying, when you're doing the Webster report, my head, you've seen where I've been, Jim. My head weren't in the game. I had no inkling. And then chatting with Alex, we just said we'd do it, because it's been like you were saying about writing and doing sketches and stuff like that and pouring your heart out. It's therapy, because you can get all your anger out without going online and slavering and shouting all swear words in middle of schools, or you can articulate yourself by pouring it down. Like even that little ditty and then the clock shot thing. Those things are not only creative, it's putting a message across. The only thing I can say is if people should, if they've been taught wrongly, and that can be shown, at least have the humility to go, hey, I've been taught wrong. But to be shut down without a thought, that was scary. It was like being in Westworld all of a sudden.
It's it's cognitive dissonance, though, isn't it? A lot of people just can't.
You can't break it. I think somebody said earlier, didn't they, Alex, about not being able to force people out of this cult type thing. And it is a cult what we've been born into. You know, you mentioned about tribal. Look at the local communities. Jimmy will tell you about his community. At the time, within the community, it was a free-for-all. You'd go out, you might have great times, but you'd have a scrap, there'd be no issues. But if you hurt one of them from outside, you had to fight a lot of them in some of the communities where I grew up. But you've not got that now. There's all division. There's no coagulations. There's no linkage apart from a few groups. And that's talking about missing cats and dogs, which are all vital. You know, we've found some dogs and cats have been found from ages. It's some great stuff. All the communication about window cleans, all that, it's a community that works online because people don't get to see each other. But there's no real issues. And then when it comes to voting, it's vote for Labour. And that must be because they're not in a dire position, or they're just about keeping float. Because people are either just completely numb to it and they go under with this stuff. And the life saving is the IVAs, because I know it saved people's lives, things like that. So I don't, people find their own remedies, but let's look at what we've got. Be humble. That's all I ever ask.
What I want to know, I want to ask Jimmy what he's going to do if they turn Wigan into a 15-minute city. Like, you'll be safe, Paul. You're in Leigh.
Well, I think Wigan, you know what? We were one of the first places to have so many things, including bedroom tax, these weird white street lights. Paul Maiden pointed it out that a lot of Wigan is like a test bed. He always said. Yeah. And then them new yellow speed cameras with
Andy Burnham, mate. Andy Burnham.
But that was one of the first. We were one of the first people to have these brand new speed cameras, the taller ones, but they're all chopping down and things. And I think Wigan will sign up for that, and then I'll have to kind of. It's like, where do you go to? This is an interesting. Where, do you go abroad? Do you go to Europe? Did you go to Guatemala and live in a log cabin? And where do you go to? Is this thing going to come in? Is everybody going to accept that? But suppose I suppose if they accepted to be locked in their houses for 2 years and jabbed with something they didn't know what they was on about, you know what I mean?
Well, we're looking at now, I think it's for September, it's definitely coming in Scotland, that chickens and birds need to be registered. And if they're not registered, they're coming for them. And what they've been doing is they've been going to farms, say there's 3,000 chickens, 6,000 chickens on the farm. They'll test half a dozen or a dozen, and they'll use the PCR test. And they find traces of things. And because they found it in half a dozen chickens, they qualified to kill the whole lot. It's, if you want to talk conspiracies, are we seeing our food being taken under control? I can't tell you how many food depots burnt to the ground in the US last year. I don't know what the crack is. All the food that's on the shelves is food like, and people are eating crisp and shite like that. I've been guilty of it in the past. It's where does that breaking point come? Because they can only mollycoddle people to a certain point, and then when we look back at the past, it's bread and circuses. Well, we've got two Manc lads getting back together. We've got the Premiership just kicking off. It's all about keeping people busy and then relaxing things by, I've heard people taking, well, I've got a 2.5 pay rise. Bloody hell, have you seen what these rates are going to go up at? Everything that you shouldn't be paying, everything's going up, and it's putting people into positions where they could lose everything that they've worked so bloody hard for, and it's soul destroying to have that knowledge and to want to tell people, and they didn't care, they weren't interested, and now you're talking to people some people have followed, people off YouTube and TikTok, and all of a sudden they're in danger of losing their house, 2 properties, because they were taking a stance against the council. There's no way you can win. You've got, like I say, we know it's a commercial tax. It can't get recognised in a court. It's a fight. People have got to go and prove it, and it'll need numbers to do that. And it also needs that to be broken enough for people to want to go and read it. Once upon a time, I'd be sat here drinking 2 litres of Pepsi Max playing FIFA. Won't be talking to you people about this. But it comes and changes my life. You're talking, Alex, about the path choosing me. All of a sudden, I'm on a path that I can't get off. You saw it with UW. How many times have I tried to get off this path, and it keeps, some bastard drags me back onto the path and starts fighting with me again.
One of the things,
even now, I'm still on guard.
you will be. That's trauma again. But I mean, I think just in terms of their strategy, the elite strategy, extermination is preferable to control. Because if you try to maintain control for too long and you don't actually physically destroy people, in the end, they will wake up and they'll do stuff en masse. So I think their view is keep people under control as much as possible while you're polishing large numbers of them off. Because when they get the logistics down and they've got their technological infrastructure in place.
The Martin Neilmore thing again, though, isn't it? Martin Neilmore again, that's what they're relying on. People being uninformed, and because it doesn't affect them yet, they do nothing. And by the time it's their turn, I mean, do you see a lot of cohesion? Sorry for interrupting, Alex. Do you see a lot of cohesion around in your community for things like this, or are they still just getting on with life?
Well, I think people are just getting on with it. They're carrying on. They're carrying on as if nothing's happening.
Exactly. People are just carrying on, and perhaps people have just been so beat down spiritually.
I agree.
Physically, like with what they're eating. Everybody's eating shit now, and everybody's being fed crap on the phones, all the rubbish they're watching. A lot of the music kids listen to now, this drill and trap, and it's rappers. It used to be a bit edgy back in the 80s, singing about drug dealing, and now they're singing about stabbing people up and and it's like putting that kind of demonic vibration inside yourself. It's going to damage kids listening to that.
We were talking about music, how much of music has influenced and affected from the 50s, 60s, and then the 70s, all those eras with the mixture of the drugs and the free love and the music, because you'll understand as an artist, music changes your feelings, doesn't it? You can put music on and you can go from wanting to kill yourself to being the happiest bloke in the world within 2 records.
Oh, from
You know,
being the happiest bloke in the world and wanting to kill yourself in 2 records.
Well, you know what? I mean,
something like that.
it's very sad, but they reckon the 1960s Summer of Love was a psyop. You know what I mean? Timothy Leary was on the CIA paper. Laurel Canyon in America, but most of the artists came from. I mean, the Mamas and the Papas, Jim Morrison, Frank Zappa. All the parents were high-ranking military. They're all military brats. A lot of them, and everything was kind of like engineered to the, you know, to break down the family unit, free love, and everything seemed like. You look back and it was like, oh, it was this a mystical, magical time of peace and love, but it was all kind of engineered. Even you look at the Sex Pistols and things like that, people say, oh, it was a revolution of the youth. The thing is, they were signed to a major label. They were signed to EMI. If there was a threat to the actual status quo and the government, they would not have been signed to a major label. They were used to divide as an instrument of divide and conquer. To create generation gaps, which Malcolm McLaren thought was an amazing thing, but all it was another form of division. And then you get John Lydon, shows you what he is really, just some old idiot selling butter. You know what I mean, kind of thing. And he's no revolutionary. They're all, it's just all theatre in it, literally.
In the chat here, Life Misunderstood says it's a really good point. They are assaulting the soul from so many different angles. I only allow my daughter to listen to classical and faith-based music. Really good point. And just echoing what Jimmy said there about when they shut down that descent in terms of record labels and stuff, and they screen out. Look at it in the history of religion. Prophets, Old Testament prophets and social critics sawn in two, killed. Socrates forced to drink the poisoned hemlock. Jesus crucified. Anyone who comes against the establishment all through history, religious or otherwise, fighting for a cause, they get silenced. Now, the interesting thing for us, I think, is do we go down that model? You could argue that's stupid, but you could also argue it's heroic. We all make heroes out of dead people, but nobody wants to be a dead person. So the question is it a wise policy? Are there better ways of doing it with awareness raising? And if we do it en masse, it's harder to bang somebody up or nail them up or kill them. So on this creative angle, I don't think our awareness of left and right brain hemispheres was there, just like the notion of trauma at the time of Jesus. So I do think we've got more resources now. Our understanding of classical civilization, you know, Plato, truth, beauty, and goodness. Well, beauty, aesthetics, all those things, you know, if we just got logic and reason, that's great, truth. But truth can be one-dimensional in some ways. It's not something not very inspiring. If you look at a beautiful sunset or a sunrise, you've got a reason to live in the morning. It's more inspiring than 2 + 2 = 4. So I think, you know, we've got to ask, if historically humans in positions of power have exercised tyranny to kill the rebels, the prophets, the social critics, it's always the same copybook. It always silences them. We've got to be looking at, do we do something better? Do we do something different? Do we take a different approach? And I think this creative hub, Jimmy, I know people do creativity, but I think it's a bright light that we need to keep shining, that we've got to keep the creativity alive. Angie was talking in the chat about it being the essence of our humanity. Life Misunderstood, talking about classical music, you know, and faith-based music, stuff that's edifying, rather than all this crap that's destroying us.
We need as many people as they can to create platforms like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I really missed your live streams when you didn't do them, Paul. But this, look, now you've got a regular. All right, you're not getting millions of views, but you've got regular.
Quite happy with that, mate. I didn't expect this. I thought there'd be me and Alex and maybe a couple of others.
Well, there's 40 odd people. That's basically a room full of people. You know what I mean, kind of thing. And if somebody else starts a live stream and then everybody keeps interacting and building on things like that, it's a start, isn't it?
If one person, I've always said to you, mate, when we've chatted, if one person thinks that they could do something, because don't they say that within 12 people you know everybody? Well, from 49, 50 people watching this, you know, the message could go everywhere. But it's not, you know, there's these are messages we're telling about the evil that's in this world. It's pointing to something. I've said many a time in conversations with you, Jim, that it's biblical. It's pointing to that. It's showing all that. All you've got to do is go and read it. I know me and you have spoken about snippets of it, and even you, as a whatever you believe in, even you can see where the threads are there. It's got to be information that you look at, because I'll tell you, I've said it again and again, the only conspiracy out of all the rabbit holes I've looked down, the only conspiracy was that I've never looked at myself. And I couldn't consider that I'd done due diligence, because if you'd have come to me, Jim, arguing with me about something that you'd never looked at, it's incredible, isn't it? You'd lose your credibility on that. So that's where I started. But if it's only because I went through what I went through that brought me to this. So there's no way I'd want to change anything, but the traumas that it's caused, the realization that the childhood that I had that was innocent, and I got everything I wanted and all that, that was just like a long time ago, probably like a wisp. And you think you've only ever been in this now point, and it's where you're at. Where's your thinking? Are you being carried on emotions, or are you actually thinking? This stopped me, just stopped me dead in my tracks. I had to start thinking, and when you start thinking about it, you've got to tell others. But 10 years ago you were a nutter, and now people are wanting to know why they can't afford to pay the bills and pay their house, and they realise they're getting ripped off, which they always knew, but.
Well,
now the knock's on the door. Everybody needs help.
I'm going to make a suggestion here. I think we need to rehabilitate the man that doesn't really need rehabilitating. That's Jimmy. And what I mean by that is we need to get him on stage again. But so I reckon this gig tomorrow, Paul, something like this, community assemblies. Well, the reason I say this is a bit tongue in cheek, but all this stuff is so serious that it can make you, it can drive you insane, like Jimmy was saying before. So if we've got that capacity to develop our humour and have a proper belly laugh, I'd like to think that although you might have been shut down in normative circles, like they killed the prophets, Jimmy, to quote Bob Marley, we could get you at one of these events, just doing 30 minutes of stand-up, sending up the state of the world.
My only problem is I've not wrote anything for years, and my act was just jokes. I've not got anything like Bill Hicks type material of like really Illuminati, whatever, that kind of.
I'm sure you can make some material based on that, mate. If you can come up with your gas is free, I'm sure you can.
Funny. Just be yourself. That's good. But what the point I'm making is, regardless of how it would pan out in practice, we need a balance between light and dark, don't we? And I think humour puts people at ease. That's what I think I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, if you can't laugh at this stuff, because you said Jimmy, when it got to you that point over COVID, where everything just rattled your brain. You didn't know if you were coming or going. You didn't know if you were in Lee or Inns. It was that bad at times. And you look everywhere, don't you? You look at all escapes, what you can do. I think you've got the back to the gym and all that stuff. What can inspire me and drag me through? But that weight, that knowledge, there's a lot of sorrow that comes with that knowledge, because you realise that the situations your parents brought you up in, all the pressures that were on them that were false, it has an effect on you, and that trauma affects you in all kinds of different ways. You burst into anger, you burst into tears. It's sometimes it's uncontrollable. You're seeing a lot with the mental health issues now.
You have to kind of let go of that if you can, or just perhaps visit it and then search through every aspect of it and say, well, you know what, I've kind of dealt with this now, and just kind of, then it just becomes another thought rather than kind of a harrowing thought that's kind of
There's only when that's up, then that's done though, don't you?
Yeah. It's I mean, what's helped me? I know you both you both Bible reading Christians. Nothing wrong with that. Technically, I'm a Christian, but I know meditating is frowned upon Is meditation.
Depends what you mean by meditating, because we meditate on the scriptures, which means like talk about it, think about it, feel it. That's meditating. But are you talking about sitting cross-legged, going?
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, we don't do things like that.
Well, all I can say, it's helped me. It's helped me, and I've not grown arms yet. You know.
Not yet.
I mean,
Not
I
yet.
don't take that view. So, like for example, the biblical view would be that meditation is a substantial thing where you meditate on, say, the Bible, but you put in like, because it's the Word of God, it's in your mind and it's enriching you. I don't think that means the usual Christian critique is that the meditation of transcendental in the Eastern traditions is that you're emptying your mind. And then the theory is that opens up portals for demons to enter in. Now, the bottom line is, right, I have mixed feelings about that. The thing is, the Bible also talks about the still small voice of God. So ultimately, I would say our central nervous systems can be activated, talking about trauma. We can be so busy that gerbil or hamster wheel actually becomes instantiated within us. So if we've got something where we can calm down, slow down, stop, and enter into a space where we could be receptive, then as long, from my perspective, is what are you receptive to? But in terms of a self-soothing, I mean, even in trauma in kids, if kids don't have the ability to self-soothe and regulate their own emotions, they'll become dysfunctional. So we do need strategies. It's like therapies, like somatic therapies, where you get into your body and out of your head. And if you've got an overly active brain or mind because of trauma, sometimes you need to slow it down. I can imagine, Jimmy, with yourself, you get lots of thoughts that will fire really fast. And as a comedian, you'll be able to pluck loads of them out really fast. And some of them are probably for the reject pile. But sometimes that's a good thing. But other times it must do your head in, literally.
You know what? I've never been diagnosed with ADHD. And one of the things that annoys me about modern life is everybody's self-diagnosing. Oh, it's me ADHD. So have you been tested for ADHD? No, but I went on Google and yeah, it's me ADHD. I wouldn't say that I've got ADHD. I've not, but I have a frenetic mind that I can be cleaning my teeth and all of a sudden I'll run to wash it for empty washer with a toothbrush in one hand. And then when I'm doing that, I'll run to the door and just do I've not emptied bin. But that works creatively too. I'll start that project then. But
sounds like an episode from Bottom, that, mate.
These days, it's me Asperger's. Have you been diagnosed? Well, I've not been diagnosed it, but Ken from Chippy says he thinks I've got Asperger's. You know what I mean? And then it's me bipolar. Are you bipolar? No, but my mum says that because I don't wash plates and stuff. I'm a bit depressed. And we live in a world now. Everybody's giving themselves a pass, don't they? So I went slightly off track then, but yeah, I think a creative mind is a difficult man. It's like a wild horse, and it's hard to master. But
what I mean is, what I'm getting at is because you've got that creative mind, when you meditate and you empty yourself, like what Alex is saying, because when we meditate, we've got the Bible and looking for that word, we're filling ourselves with that word. Nothing else has authority. Whereas if you empty it and don't put anything in there, you're inviting anything. And because you're creative, it's like, the method actors use this. Method actors always talk about channeling. They're inviting that spirit that can play that. Look at what happened with Heath Ledger, where that he couldn't get out of that character. He stayed in it. This stuff's real when you look at it. So if you're meditating, if you went but then opened the Bible, as Alex said, it might not have as much of an issue because that would be what you're focused on. But if you're concentrating on emptying yourself, then anything can come in.
I don't want to invite ridicule because, like, a lot of the people I used to, any day, if you say something different, you just get pounced on. But
yeah,
story for you. I went to London and I had a really bad acting audition, and I just completely fluffed it. And then that triggered off all things of like me being childhood inadequacy and all that. And I was sat on this bench in London, and I saw somebody in like pajama type thing sat aside of me, and I thought it was a Muslim or something. But it was an Hare Krishna. I got talking to him, and they're all right. I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to one of these Hare Krishna temples. And I went to Hare Krishna in London, so I was giving it all Hare Krishna with all doing George Harrison phase. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to see if there's when it came back up. I said, well, let's see if there's an Hare Krishna temple in Bolton. And I went to one in Bolton. It was like it could be like a Peter Kay sketch. And I'm there with my friend, and they've given us these books in Hindu, and like they're all singing along, and you know, it's something when you don't know words to, kind of thing. But through that, it's a bit of a difference with the Hindu Christian thing. It's different from the straight Hare Krishnas. The straight Hare Krishnas don't do the Om meditation, and through the Hindus, I'd go into the Om meditation, and apparently Om is the word for God. And what they say, and the Krishnas say, is in the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Their interpretation of it is Om. The Om is the sound of creation.
But how many gods do they have? They have thousands.
Yeah, I mean, any day, all I can say is I can't theologically argue on it and stuff. It works for me, and I've not gone on a mass murder spree. Yeah, I don't know anything. I think it's what's fun. It's a spirit. It's a spiritual practice that it's done me more good. Because this year I was in a complete state with anxiety and my mind, and it has actually centered me, and that's all I can say. And if that's a bad thing, I can't help that, you know.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
personally, go on.
Personally, I don't think it's a bad thing. So So the point is, what happens to Native Americans, Aboriginals, people in tribes in the jungle? So they've got a connection with their environments. It's the same. If you look at Norse myth, right, before anything was Christianized in the late end of the first millennium, they largely had this land-based, nature-based religion. Everything in their metaphors and myths was about ice giants and fire giants, and that was typically connected to the landscape. So the first point of contact that we all have is our immediate environment. Until you get any holy books, humans were just connected to each other and their environments. So that was the medium through which a creator would speak to you until there was a written word. So everyone is somewhere on a spectrum of experience, and at the end of the day, you can only respond authentically to the impulses within yourself. And if the heart, for me, if the heart longs for something more than it's got now, if you don't feel that your current life is authentic and you need something more, that's like the plea for God. Like, I've got a friend, he'll not be on this, watching this now, he'll be tucked up, but he's into international relations. It's his passion, right? He totally, absolutely has to master every element of understanding of international relations. So people say, what's that got to do with religion? Well, it's his passion. He's seeking truth. So he starts off in international relations. He's never opened the Bible, say. He's never darkened the door of a church. God doesn't look where you're not looking. If you were in a place, trapped in a room, and three of the walls were smeared with dog excrement, and the fourth wall, yeah, there you go. The fourth wall, right, has got a beautiful image on it, like the Sistine Chapel, but you're on a swivel chair. Now, you can still smell the crap on the walls, but you can still have a choice that where you orientate that chair, whether you want to look at the three walls smeared with excrement or whether you want to look at the Sistine Chapel wall. But you're in that room. So the question is, there's so much you can do, but let's just say you're not looking for God. Jesus said, the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which is lost. Well, presumably the lost were trying to get home, but that was it. So he came for them. So to me, we show a basic desire if we feel things are inauthentic. God speaks to us where we're at. So to me, everyone's starting somewhere, and then he just brings you further along the path. He brings you further along the path and reveals more truth. And if you're in integrity and you're a genuine seeker, I personally don't think that initially matters, because it's the heart being right with God. Christians believe it ultimately everything comes back to Jesus Christ. But the bottom line is that doesn't mean you start by reading the Bible. Some people do. Some people are totally. Oh, look at the Apostle Paul, Saul of Tarsus, persecuting Christians until a light came and a revelation. Why are you persecuting me? So everyone's revelation is different. So I don't take the straight down the line view. I believe God finds a way.
You don't judge anybody else's path either, because
No.
that's what I've learned. That's one thing I've learned. What is mine to bear is mine to bear. You know my foibles about things, so it's like when somebody tells you, well, they've read in the Bible that you must pay your bills. They've read the text, what they were quoting. It's totally different. This has got to be exposed. This is not about religion at this point. What we're talking, I know it's a spiritual battle. It's always been that. Even when I was doing mediumship, I always knew there was spirit there. I was getting messages from somewhere. It wasn't just me making stuff up. People took it. So I've always had that communication with it. Now it's totally changed. Now I'm quite reserved because I want to make sure I'm not inviting anything like that in. So if I was meditating, I mean, I don't know what you mean. Meditating, sitting, I can't see a problem with, Jim. It's if you're doing the poses or things like that, that's certain energetical, that's certain energies that you're putting out that goes to these one or several of these gods. That's how it seems to work if you're doing that type of meditation. You might just be sat there clearing your head and just letting your thoughts flutter about.
It's the on meditation and mudras.
Yeah, but only you can do it. Well, that is ritual. So if you want to do it, just understand it is. If you're feeling benefits of it, but all the same, why wouldn't you read something you've not checked? I had to, because there's truth in it. The truth that I ended up with came to me. I didn't find it. I've looked everywhere else.
Kind of like what resonates with you, Paul, isn't it? Is what personally resonates with you, you'll be drawn to. And
yeah, I told you. I've said to you when we met. That was a unique message. I'm the way, the truth, the life. It was all different to everything I'd learned that was already wrong. So it made my interest. It piqued my interest to go and look. So without all that, I wouldn't have got there. So I don't. If you're feeling better, mate. I mean, I've seen you in some bad places. You've got to get on the right side to be able to think clearly.
I think there's another really important point that gets missed in Christian churches, and I'd say it's fundamental. Theology is great to a degree, but what you tend to get in churches is a lot of people talking theology. Well, anyone could talk theology. At the end of the day, Jesus said, basically, how many times should I forgive my brother? When he was asked, 70 times 7, he said, mercy, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Talk about radical. And he said, you are the light of the world. So ultimately, for Christians are supposed to embody Jesus Christ. It's all right, Christians saying, read this chapter and verse in the Bible. There's a place for that. But the first point of contact for the world, just when the world encountered Jesus Christ, was they were impressed. They were struck. He says, and the people were amazed because he taught as one having authority and not as a scribe.
He taught totally different as well. It was different to what they'd been taught.
Yeah. But they encountered.
That's what it felt like. That's what it felt like with the bills of exchange with me. It's different to what I've been taught. That's how devastating it was.
But they encountered, when Jesus walked among them, they encountered something that was so radically different. The presence of God in this human being it's like bowling the bowling ball through the Skittles. Now, Jesus said the same. He said, you ought to do the same. So you can say people should do this and should do that. We can all say they should do this and they should read the scripture and they should appropriate this scripture and they should believe this scripture and not that. But ultimately, what Jesus did, he showed up in a culture that had a very well-developed theology, and they wanted to throw him off a cliff, and ultimately they killed him, his own people, because he exemplified something completely different. And he went around doing good, healing people, cleansing them, showing them mercy. I mean, It's a pretty good, it's not exactly a rap sheet, is it, for a criminal record? And yet we actually crucify him and release the murderer. So, but that's because he embodied something. And so for me, Christians, first and foremost, are the light of the world. If they don't embody that same Jesus, I don't care what the theology is.
That's what I mean. When people say Christian, they always say about Catholic and stuff like that. I've no time for that. I mean, me and Jimmy have had loads of conversations, gone into depth about it. I went straight to what I thought could be the best I've got, and I went to it myself, and I've got my opinions from that, and those feelings are very strong. It made sense to me. It joined a lot of dots for me. You know, do I practice what it is perfectly? No, I'm bloody trying to learn, and you know, you fall down all the time.
Religion's such a contentious issue. I mean, even within Christianity, you've got, we're the Jehovah's Witnesses, we're better than the Mormons, well, we're better than the Catholics. Everybody's worshipping the same God, literally. And there's all these divisions. Well, they don't have jam sandwiches on a Tuesday.
I grew up with my mum saying bloody Catholics.
They're not true to the word of God. You know what I mean? They're having marmalade, and it clearly states here. You know, and this Jehovah's Witness, I'd naming no names. There was somebody I did a podcast with, and I used to Bluey got in touch with me. I said, "Come for a breakfast with me," and I went for a breakfast with him. I knew he was a Jehovah's Witness, and I thought, this is weird. And you're a big fan of you, Jimmy. I thought, well, I'm going to support you, and we're having a meeting tonight at the Kingdom Hall. Do you want to come down? And then I just blanked him because instead of texting me all the time, but come to Kingdom Hall, and he's trying to recruit me to the Jehovah's Witnesses. And
well, hang on a minute. Why did you discriminate against them when you went to Buddhists? What's up with you?
Because Jehovah's Witnesses are weirdos, aren't they? No, I'm
sorry. 10 years ago, I was inducted into the Tao, and I was stood in front of a 5-ton Buddha, praying and going, "What am I doing here?" There was nothing. It was a 5-ton Buddha. It's strange when I look.
It's the concept of what it's religion, isn't it? It's a spiritual concept of.
You're looking for something, though, aren't you? I know you're searching for that connection.
I mean, I've found something that works for me and helps me with my mind, and I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. You know what I mean? And if that is a bad thing, well, I'll take the consequences for that. You know, that's all I can say. It works.
You can only start where you're at, mate.
Good on you, pal.
You know.
But yeah, definitely, we need comedy. We've got to preserve the living human spirit. You know, like people who are interesting, it's like moth to flame. The last thing all of us want is to be boring, right? If you make your life unique and interesting and varied and keep it fresh, we're still responsible to ourselves. It's like these people who go to GP and they go, "Yeah, just give me a docket and make me better. Give me a £9-10 prescription or a couple of different medications. Oh, I'm ill. I'll go to my doctor to make me better." They don't think I had to take responsibility for my life, my health from the beginning. So a lifetime of eating crap food because, you know, maybe our parents didn't make us aware, drinking all kinds of pop with all kinds of crap in it. And then you get cancer at 67 and you can't connect it to this, that, the other. But your lifestyle was wanton. So, you departed the mortal coil 15 years earlier. Fair enough. We could improve things though, but we rely on experts all the time, specialists who can fix us, and we don't do our diligence. So this is another thing we have to do, take responsibility, do better at that. But for that, we need good information. We know the Western diet is all lies. You know, the number of people I hear of recently, I think Janet was mentioning to me the other day, it was on the chat a while ago, the number of people who are taking up the carnivore diets. If Jordan Peterson did it with just salted beef, his daughter has healed herself from all these sort of autoimmune conditions. So there are diets out there that are obscured from us that we need to get with. So whether it's, the herbal stuff, whatever it is to improve our health, Chinese medicine, I'm open to whatever, where we live much more consciously, body awareness, everything. Because if we don't, we're always going to expect someone to come in and save us. And obviously, from a religious point of view, we believe, if we're Christian, in an ultimate salvation. But in the meantime, what are we doing? Are we helping ourselves or not?
Well, I've certainly been looking at stuff like that. I mean, I start my fast. Well, started my fast today, so I'll be fasting for this week because I need a kick up my arse. I need to.
Caps lost weight,
Say again, over.
Your caps lost weight.
My cap.
Yeah.
I've not been trying to lose weight, mate. We've had a lot on, but hopefully now, with what we've been through, Alex, I think I should be able to start moving forward. But I do need that kick up my arse because
you're looking well, though. To be fair,
people have said I'm looking better. It's when them concrete blocks come out your pocket, mate. You just feel a bit lighter when things are a little bit better, a little bit more under control. That the bullies didn't win again this time. It's one of them that you just got to keep going with. Been so hectic the last 4 years. It's been like armed police days on crack and speed. It's been that quick and that hard. Hopefully, I can now just move forward. Listen, lads, we've done over 2 hours. What's the crack? What's the plan?
Well, what I want to say is, first of all, thanks for coming on, Jimmy.
Thank you.
No matter how long this continues, but the thing is, I was just realizing, you talked about all these lookalikes, but you are the real Johnny Vegas. You are who Johnny Vegas wished he'd always been.
Well, thank you. I think.
No, that's a compliment.
You could have played that part in Benidorm, mate. You could have been that part in Benidorm, easy.
Well, if I'd have played the game, if I'd have played the game, but
you'll have to tell us about that sometime, mate.
It is what it is. I mean, we're all on a path, aren't we? We all get our own tests. I do believe that, So.
Well, are you back now? Are you from your siesta? Are you back on it? I've seen a few of your videos with the Mad Scotsman.
Community service. What did you just? And I've not been on community service, but
no. I said, are you back on after your siesta?
Well, I thought I said CS. I thought, Luke Marsden said, "We make these videos for me," but you know what? I'm a bit tired of it in the sense of I've been doing all this creative writing. I've wrote a screenplay, to be honest with you. I've not told anybody. I wrote an 110-page screenplay.
Awesome.
And it's about comedy. It's about the dark side of comedy. It's about betrayal. It's about what happened to me. I don't want to go too much into it, but talk's cheap. It's one of the most enjoyable and enriching things I've done for a long time. Instead of just talking to a camera and saying, "What do you think about turnips?" You know what I mean? I've just sat down and I've wrote, and it's me. I wrote a book, Alex. I don't even know. I wrote one book, and the second draft is all it needs is like cleaning up dramatically. I'm gonna get on with that. But talk's cheap.
How many characters? How many characters are in your screenplay?
There's quite a few actually. There's about 5, 6.
Would you consider putting it on at Bolt Little Theatre?
I want to write it. I want basically first. I've done one draft of it. You know what I mean? So I want to get it to a point where it's with art, you're never going to get there.
Yeah.
Or as near as damn it.
Yeah.
Then I'll assess it. But at the moment, I'm just enjoying if nothing ever comes of it and it stays on the computer, it was just an amazing, a really enriching thing to do. That was
awesome.
The creativity that people, everybody should be creative. If you're depressed, and one of the biggest things with depression is lack of purpose. When you start sliding into lack of purpose, that is one of a key factor in a lot of people's depression. It's just once you anchor onto a purpose, it doesn't matter if it makes you no money or millions. You were locked. The actual doing of it is a more rewarding and enriching part than even if you get paid for doing it. You know.
Well, we know all this trans thing, right, mate? And the thing here is, right, you're a bloke. You'll never have children from your own body, but your creative products are like your children.
Yeah,
and absolutely. In a way,
you know,
they can get out into the world and they can grow up. They start small. When they're on the page, I suppose they're like either a newborn or a fetus. And if they come out into the world and they can grow. One of the things I found about creativity, my friend Ray has taken a lot of my poems and put them to music, and some of them have been sung. Now, when I listen to that now, when I hear one of my poems sung or to music, I can't hear the poem in the way I originally conceived it when I wrote it for an audience that would be reading it. But I got into stand-up and performance storytelling and performance poetry, and I noticed when rhyme and meter kick in, you move away from the classical, and somebody else develops it into a song or a musical piece, it morphs it. So it started off as one thing, somebody else had something else on, takes on a life of its own, and it moves further and further away from the originator, the creator. But it takes on this life, like Harry Potter. There's a Harry Potter world now. These characters exist.
Creative projects have a life of their own, and they eventually you thought, well, I didn't create it to be that, and it becomes something else. And another weird thing is you might do something, you think, oh, it's a load of crap that what I've done, and so many people might be into it, and then it leaves you scratching your head, thinking, hang on, if I'm not into it, why are other people into it? But it's bizarre, but we all should do more of it. You know, that's where my final thoughts for the evening.
Absolutely. As Angie said, we need to create drama of a positive and enriching kind. So there we go. That's definitely a call to action. I'll tell you what, Jimmy, if you ever put that on, mate, when you finish it, or you have any plans to do it on, put it on, contact me, because I had some involvement with Little Theatre probably about 12, 13 years ago in Bolton. And I do absolutely believe that we need to get that type of quote. I'm sure it'll be an absolute gem, mate.
Well, thank you, Alex, for your faith. I'm also working on a second screenplay called Your Gas is Free, about one man's lone crusade against the gas and energy companies. You know, they hunt him down like rat. It has a Rambo ending.
Oh,
it sounds like a knowhead, mate.
It's like First Blood in Lee with energy companies.
Yeah.
He sounds like a right bell end. I'd stay away from that. But do you want to give out your YouTube, your web page, and everything?
If you want to spam me and abuse me, I'm on the Wigan Joker page. I'm Wigan Joker on everything: Facebook, TikTok. If you're retarded, you know what I mean. I'm on there as well, kind of thing. But thank you for everybody for having me on. I've enjoyed myself.
Been brilliant, mate. Really good talking to you.
My pleasure.
If you just hang fire, Jim, we'll have a quick chat when we finish.
No
worries. Will you come on again at some point, Jim?
I will do, with a different vest.
Yeah.
Sounds good, mate. I'll pick a vest that fits me next time.
Wouldn't have you any other way, mate.
Awesome.
So have you any last words, Alex?
Well, Luke, thanks everybody for turning up in the chat. What's the current figures like, Paul? How many are still with us?
We dropped down to 40, mate.
Still?
A few demons ran out of the chat room. I think one's come back. But as soon as we started talking about God and Christ, some demons left.
Right. Well, there you go. But yeah, well, no, it's good. Thanks everyone for showing up and contributing on the chat. And we hope to see more of you in the coming weeks coming on. Get your courage. You've got a story to tell. That's what we need, people's stories. That's what keeps us human. We're all made of stories. And if we don't share our stories, we're not going anywhere. Stories have all the possibilities of human life embedded in them. And we've got to unfold them by telling them.
Indeed. So that's another Webster report wrapped up. We're doing all right with this. I'm quite enjoying it. It's been a lot of good therapy for me to get this stuff off my chest and new people do with it what you want and don't do anything with it. It doesn't matter. Me and Alex were willing to come on here and just talk to each other, if nothing else, because there's a real issue that's going on. Everybody can feel it. Nobody knows where it's coming from, but they do. But for some reason, they can't break that barrier. The programming from the traumas that is generational. Remember, we don't just have our own trauma. We've got trauma that comes from two parents, and they are parents. So we've got generational traumas that is passed down that act out on us, and we don't know why. They play on emotions. So it's about being aware, because I know so many people who work so bloody hard, love the families, do anything for the families, but they're busy, kept working, and they could miss what's coming. You know, 1 minute you're on a sun lounger, the next minute there's a tsunami, and you think, oh, I can get away from this, and it's overwhelming. People say it won't happen here. Have they said this before in the past? We look back to World War II, World War One. We know all the corruption and handshakes that went on to cause them wars and why those wars were fought. But nobody cares, because we've got a lot of propaganda and we wave flags. We've got to be humble and, you know, bring ourselves back down to earth and start asking some serious questions. And with that, I'd like to thank everybody in the chat room and all those that will come afterwards, hopefully, and make up the numbers. Please hit that like button. I've never said that before. It sounds weird, but, you know, it might help boost getting this information out to people who are going to really need it, because, you know, one way or another, the time to sound is running out, once I heard. Take care, guys.
Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Your gas is free, your gas is free, in a debt-based economy. Here's the Webster Report with Paul the Gasman Webster.